So I want to go back to this idea of cybernetic conversations. Um, what conversation are you having, Jordan? what what is what is drawing you to? Part of me theorizes that you've talked to people at all sorts of levels of society. You've talked, I think you said whenever you were kind of formulate what was drawing you to this formulation of Civium was that you were talking to the experts of experts, and they were kind of throwing up their hands about certain things and you're like, well, okay, I've talked to these people, like, and now you're talking to this random guy in Arkansas on a Monday morning. What is that?
Okay. So the point. Remember, we're coming back.
Okay, maybe.
And the word cybernetic is, I'm not sure if you were using that precisely, but it turns out to be precisely the right term. The word cybernetic comes from the discipline of cybernetics, which is related to the discipline of systems science and control theory. And so it's what are the control structures that we're using to navigate some sort of problem space. And so if I have to pick up one of those little toys, the fair things that never work, I got the claw. I have to have a way of moving it in an XY domain and then causing it to go down and close. So that's my cybernetic control structure, has the ability to make those kinds of choices so that I can navigate the space that I'm in. The reason why I'm saying that is the problem that we're faced with, and I mean we, meaning humanity now, is strictly outside of the cybernetic capacity of the analytic mode of intelligence. We have the language for that. No amount of AI. Take as much AI as you want. Doesn't matter. The problem that we are faced with is strictly outside of the analytic mode of intelligence. It's not a quantity issue. It's a quality issue. Can't be done. Okay. Well, then we're going to have to figure out how to use this, participate with, and use this other mode of intelligence. This other mode of intelligence has the advantage of being infinite. So it's cybernetic capacity. The word cybernetic doesn't really even apply anymore. And nothing is outside of the infinite. That's nice. Both in the context of nothing is outside of the infinite and nothing is beyond the infinite, both terms. But when we're engaging in a relearning how to operate in that mode, of which the word faith is the actual, or pistis is the proper term, we begin to discover that it's not quite clear why we're doing what we're doing, because that's not up to us. So the short answer is, from an analytic perspective, I don't know. But I noticed over time that, let's say, for example, let's just do a very simple example. Imagine rich and powerful people. I know far too many billionaires, like way too many billionaires, and they are categorically unimpressive in almost all the ways that matter. Almost kind of, except for the number of zeros in their bank account. It's shocking. They have a couple of other virtues. I'll give them that. They're generally pretty smart. Rarely, truly brilliant, but generally pretty smart. And yeah, generally very motivated. Right? So they have virtues. I'm being mean. But the point is, they lack courage in a deep way, often. And they're not that interesting, usually. But less so over time, for reasons that we can get into if you'd like. I know lots of people who are ostensibly powerful politically, leaders of nation states or large bureaucratic organizations. Same thing. And so if you're trying to engage in a strategic analysis of who to interact with and or influence, I know brilliant people, I know knowledgeable people, I know all kinds of Nobel Prize winners, like fill in the blank. If you're trying to engage in a strategic analysis of where in the social graph to interact, what kind of social graph to construct, how to build something that has a certain kind of influencing power or knowledge power, you're engaging in an algorithmic construct of a design, you will discover, I'll just sort of save you time, as I discovered, that there's no there. It's not going to work. That approach is not available. And this is when I finally got to the point of, I get it. this entire mode of intelligence is strictly incapable of solving the problem. So no, it's not a matter of not building the right kind of collective intelligence of this sort. It's a matter that the mode of even endeavoring to do so is the wrong approach. Well, it begins surrendering into the infinite intelligence, which, fortunately enough, is inviting us to do so. Is constructed entirely out of love, and not a broad-based sort of generic love, but a particular unique love quality seeking to reach each and every one of us individually down to the core of who we are. That's really nice. It's a good. That's a really nice to have, and has infinite intelligence. Well, this of course requires a different approach. Now it's more like riding a surfboard than it is like driving a motorcycle, because the ocean is in charge, and you're learning how to dance with the ocean. And this is again my definition of what the word faith means, or pistis. Cultivating a capacity, which is part of us. We have this capacity because we bear that image to perceive these very subtle perceptions and being able to make choices. So, why am I talking to you? I'm talking to you because God told me to. And the best way that I understand what that means. You reached out in a certain way. I tried to use the form of intelligence that I've been cultivating over years that is of this sort to inquire into it. And the sense I had was, yeah, that's a good idea. Something good will come of this. It's a good, it's not, there's integrity to it. There's, how do I say, rightness to it. And it's not my job to try to do anything else beyond that, other than show up here with as much of my own integrity as I can and as much clarity as I can muster in this moment, which is, again, to say just to get out of the way and let the Holy Spirit to speak through me to those who are called to listen. Right? So this is that all this starts to, it weaves together very nicely once the pieces start coming together. We're in this turbulent middle zone where it's very difficult to figure out. And just to put an example to help the more secular mind, this is how art works. Or music is the most basic example. If you're trying really hard to write music using your mind, it's going to be bad music. It'll be bad either because it's just clunky or because it's manipulative. You might have learned the skill of producing emotionally affective music. That's bad. Effective, but bad. But if you've cultivated the skill to simply listen to what the music wants to be inside of you, and it's coming from a place that you can't really identify. Where is it? I don't know. Well, the answer is transcendent. It's everywhere or nowhere, in both. But you have a faculty. You have a capacity to perceive it. And you have a capacity to not just perceive it in its most subtle sense, but ultimately because you've spent time listening to it and learning how different things inside of you in the spiritual domain bring more clarity to that perception, you then can cultivate the capacity to express it in a way that is true, meaning that the sound that you make, the rhythm and the tone that you put together is acknowledged by that which is expressing itself as of quality. Yes, this is the thing that was coming through, the tone, the richness. Now, of course, then you're bound by your skillfulness and your artistry and by the limitations of being a finite being. You'll never truly fully express it. That is beyond the capacity of a finite being. And only the great masters will be able to express that. I mean, you can tell, like when a master expresses something, there's something about that master which is whole. Like there's a richness to it. There's a subtlety to it. There's a nuance and rich, which is far beyond, again, the kind of the skillful aping of the manipulator who make things that are almost like a magician, waving hands and sparkles and fireworks. It can shock you, but that's not the same thing. Right? That when the master does it, you are met. Your perception is met in a way that is much more akin to the richness of the truly infinite intelligence that is expressing through that master. So that's anybody who's participated in that, anybody who's done art in that way knows of what I speak. And that's why beauty first, by the way. And then I'm just saying all of it, everything.
I have a story about that. So, in the late aughts, whenever I was in this kind of, a Christian and I was listening to all these new atheist arguments here on YouTube, and Insecure, and I was writing music, trying to write music, and doing these church, worship services, and on a search for truth. Then I betrayed my own truth or my belief, and forsook my vows. But the funny thing is I wanted to write an album about truth. I wanted to write an album about what is true. I wanted to write a propositional album, and I couldn't. I couldn't write anything. So, and then I experienced what it was like to be filled with the truth again. And and there's been some new songs, and not just actual songs, but a new song of this life. So that's been my experience with that in actuality.